Geeta Dhyanam. Om. O Bhagavad Gita, by which Arjuna was illumined by Lord Krishna himself, and which was composed of 18 chapters within the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa. O Divine Mother, destroyer of rebirth, who showers the nectar of oneness upon us. O Bhagavad Gita, my affectionate mother, on thee I meditate. All the Upanishads are the cows. The milker is the cowherd boy, Krishna. Arjuna is the calf. People of purified intellect are the drinkers. And the milk is the supreme nectar of the Gita. My salutations to the Lord, who is the source of supreme bliss, whose grace makes the mute eloquent and the crippled cross mountains. Hari Om Tat Sat. Okay, I have to ask, what's the question that we're dealing with? That's the question that Arjuna has asked, that Lord Krishna is beginning to answer.
How to devote.
Very good. And
What question I asked? What's the question?
how to devote. Arjuna asks.
Yeah. What's that devotion? Highest devotion?
And he asks an either-or question.
Which is the manifest or the unmanifest? Which is the better
Very
devotion?
good. To approach you.
Yes.
To worship you. To worship you. Very good. Okay. And so, interesting. There are a couple of different approaches to this. And actually, Swami Satchidananda provides a little bit of a translation. So a little bit of a different translation on this. It's interesting. He's simplifying it. So, and we were working with that yesterday, whether to simplify it or not, and we chose not to. That's why we have Swami Chinmayananda in hand this morning. Because there's a subtle point here that seems worth exploring to this question. So, Swami Satchidananda's translation, I'll tell you, I'll just read it. And I've checked it on a few others, and it's not exactly the same. And you'll see what the point is. So the question is, and I'm not trying to raise controversy here, but always in study of the Gita, there is controversy anyway. Because the thing is, there's even controversy in Sanskrit. When scholars are having the discussion in Sanskrit, there's even on some of the points because of the dexterity of the Sanskrit language. Because aloha means hello and goodbye both, but it doesn't actually mean hello and goodbye. It means something more like namaste. And so, so even if we were speaking in the Polynesian tongue, how do you know whether someone's saying hello or goodbye?
Yeah.
Only in context. Only in context if they're coming or going. But and so Sanskrit is something like this. So you have to have the context, but sometimes the scholars will argue about the context. and since in a way we are sitting in the chariot with Krishna, and that's the ultimate arbiter is for ourselves to find ourselves in the chariot and to go through this consultation ourselves, because based upon the context and our own life situation is the context.
Oh.
Right? Are we coming or going? And so in Sanskrit, we'll find the word could mean either, depending upon our context, and it would be correct in either context. Just like aloha. So these arguments that we have are resolved inside.
Yes.
And so sometimes we'll see in these texts that the teacher, and we see it in particular in the Upanishad translation that we're working with in the commentary, where Swamiji says it means this or it could mean this. And he's actually very good about providing both possible meanings. And so we're dealing with one of these this morning. It's not quite as controversial, but I'll go ahead and put light on it if you're interested and point it out. Which will, and it'll get resolved in the inner way, in context of your own life, your own psyche, your own choices. And then you might say it absolutely means this, and someone might argue with you in the future.
That's okay. Yeah.
And then you might say, well, yes, it could in your situation.
Yes.
So here's the controversy. Okay, where did we put those glasses? There you are, dear. So when Krishna begins to answer, what Swami Satchidananda says is, those devotees who continuously think of me with zeal, with sincerity, and thus steadily worship me, manifest in one form or another, are perfectly established in yoga. Did you catch the difference between that and the translation we read yesterday? We'll read Swami Satchidananda again, and you can have them, or Swami Chinmayananda again, and we can have them side by side. So Swami Chinmayananda, those who, fixing their mind on me, worship me, ever steadfast and endowed with supreme faith, these, in my opinion, are the best in yoga. Now that's the same sutra. There are 2 points in Swami Chinmayananda's, 2 points of difference. Do you catch them? What's the first one that you hear that's different? Should I read them again?
Intense intent.
Okay, just listen carefully to this, and then this is Swami Satchidananda again. Those devotees who continuously think of me with zeal, with sincerity, and thus steadily worship me, manifest in one form or another, are perfectly established in yoga. And then, those who, fixing their mind on me, worship me, ever steadfast and endowed with supreme faith, these, in my opinion, are the best in yoga. So what's the first difference that you hear between them?
Well, he said in my opinion.
One speaks against
He
it.
said, in my opinion, and manifest. Those are the 2 differences, yeah. So you can look at what's common, and what's common you can say, okay, I can go with that. But then there's some discussion around the other. So here's what's common. Those who, fixing their mind on me, worship me, steadfast. Here it's translated as with sincerity, but it'll have the same meaning. So, and that's what we started talking about yesterday morning, because that's really the essence here. But then here we have the concept of manifest in one form or another. Here it's absent. And checking other translations, absent. So Swami Satchidananda has added something that we would have to believe is open to interpretation in the Sanskrit. So he's interpreting it a certain way based upon context. What's his context? The context of his devotees and what they're working with. Which is perfectly valid. And I recommend this Geeta a lot. And so to those who are reading it, there are no accidents here. So it must be so we'll pick up here with Swami Chinmayananda. We'll continue to, and we do come back to this point. But then, in my opinion, some scholars might not want to deal with, because they might not want to admit that the absolute could have an opinion about something. Because we're trying to get across the point, trust in what the Lord is saying here and live it. But of course, trusting in what the Lord is saying here and living it reveals the truth within you,
Oh,
right? And then you might put it in different words. And is your path and your path exactly the same?
no.
No. So, so as the absolute, how to address that? You know, one way it's addressed is through Swami Shivananda. You write 300 books.
Get his point across.
And you say, through Swami Shivananda, well, I won't be able to meet each of you in person, so I've given each of you what you need in order to realize.
That's so true. Yeah.
Right? Depending upon your path. So why does there have to be in the same time both Paramahansa Yogananda and Swami Shivananda? The same absolute speaks through both of them. And they actually, in essence, are saying exactly the same thing. They're pointing to exactly the same. But their styles are a little different. And so here we get this idea of, in my opinion. So he's not giving it as an absolute. Usually when he's speaking, he is. But here he's saying there's an opening here. Interestingly. And when he speaks to the direct answer to the question, which we'll get to, I think, tomorrow morning, but we're stepping through it now. Lord Krishna has to answer to both of these possibilities. And this is why these first 9 shlokas of the Yoga devotion are profound. And each of us will find our own way in them, but the key is we have to devote. And we do, to something. We've had this conversation. Right? So here, I observe it as a complete reorientation of life, because I found the capacity to devote because it was really the same energy and the same attention and awareness that I'd applied to worldly pursuits. I didn't actually have to learn something new.
Yeah, that's true.
I had to turn everything around.
Yeah, redirect.
I just had to turn it all around, right? I had to find a way of relating to the absolute. First, I had to see that what I was devoted to would never pay off. But not just for me. It wouldn't pay off for anyone. Part of the great motivation was, oh my God, it's not just that I'm not finding the happiness, it's look at the crap that I'm bringing into everyone's lives.
Yeah.
Look at what I'm bringing. This is what I was dealing with when I looked at my life. Oh my God, I can't do this.
Even the store clerk.
I'd be better off dead.
Yeah.
And so, which didn't help the depression a lot, but it helped.
It's true.
But it helped to reorient. Right? It provided an opening.
Yeah.
So that I could be present finally and hear and see and come to realize I can't do this. And by the way, I'm devoted to something that's meaningless. Right? And I can be successful all day long, but it doesn't have meaning. In fact, it does the opposite of what I would want it to do.
Right. No reward.
Does that make sense? And
Yeah.
so then, but each of us, we do have this power of devotion. It's a question of what are we pointing it at? What are we devoting to? And the question that has been asked here is a perfect question for us. And the answers that are being provided are beautiful. So we'll pick up where we were. There are 3 points, and we saw the difference. The difference will get reconciled in a few slokas. It'll get washed out, and it'll also get washed out inside. But I pointed out it's interesting, and it also points out some of, when we're studying Gita or we're studying other texts, we will see differences. We will, and by the way, when we read them, when we study them, we'll get something from it, and then we'll see passages that make no sense whatsoever to us, and later on we come back and we'll find what we got from it wasn't really what we needed to get from it. I didn't really understand it, and then something that we didn't grok, Ashura's term, something that we didn't really get or understand before it starts to reveal itself. As a Sangha, this is the third time through the Bhagavad Gita. And on pilgrimage and then driving around, we've done it twice. So we have a little history with it here. And then sitting with Swami Ramaswarup and sitting with Swami Paramananda, we look for exact answers. We look for exact answers. And the Gita, what the Gita is doing is it's equipping us, this whole dialogue, especially if we put it in practice, and only if we put it in practice, it's equipping us to get the exact answers within. But this discussion, if we take time with it, even if you, over the next week as we're going through it, if you pick up a copy of the Gita, whichever flavor you like, and you look at these and you look at some of the commentaries and you take a little bit of time in contemplation with it, because this question of devotion is really a big question. I won't presuppose this to say the number one, but it's right there. It's right there. When we start coming to terms with the fact that life is not what we took it to be, and as long as we take it to be a certain way, then we're
Stuck in a box.
then we're stuck,
Yeah.
and we're suffering.
Yeah.
And so, and then, and we all come to deal with this, and it's so darned hard because there's also a comfort in our suffering. To be able to go and talk with other people and get their sympathy,
Right.
right?
It's the easier road.
It's the easier road.
Yeah.
It's the easier
Comes
way.
in nice.
And so it's actually easier to stay in the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Even when you start to realize that you're in the darkness. And so, and these tendencies are so hard to root out. The tendencies towards lethargy or towards arbitrariness or towards judgment of others. And all of these tendencies, they're very, very hard to root out. And
Roots.
but we come to see they're of no value, and they don't relate to the truth.
Right.
And so we have the question, and we're bound to see if we really explore life, it's not the way I took it to be, and now I have a choice. Do I live it the way that I'm learning it really is, or do I continue to take this path and live this as if life?
It becomes a choice.
And it's a real choice. And to be honest, most of us continue to live the as if life.
Right. The easier, softer way.
Yeah, but it's not easier and softer.
No, but we think it is. Because of what we
we're
know.
stuck. We're stuck.
Yeah.
Great wisdom. Eckhart Tolle, we picked up one of his books one day for Chocolatry Satsanga and opened it up. And what he was sharing is in the situations that we encounter in life, he said, we always have three choices in order to progress, in order to move forward based upon the situation. You could apply this to any situation. generally speaking, you would apply it to something that's not comfortable, uncomfortable situation. So he says the first choice is to change it. So if it's a person giving you grief, whatever, you strive to change that person, change the situation. The second is you leave it. And the third is that you accept it. And if you take a while contemplating, you'll see these are actually the only three viable options. And he would say, now, it might not be the most wise choice to try to change it or to run away from it, but he said, still, if you do that, you'll learn something. Right?
Yeah.
And of course we can sit here and say, and if you try to change it, you might learn that you can't. And if you try to run away from it, you might learn that it follows you anyway. And that if you accept it, you're likely to learn that it loses power over you.
That's fact.
Right?
Yeah.
And you're no longer a victim to it.
Oh.
So, but generally speaking, we don't take one of those three choices. We stew in it.
Yeah.
We meditate upon it. We contemplate it. We play it over and over and over again and break our heads on, what should I do? What should I do? What should I do? We try to think our way out of it. And what happens?
It's just loops.
And somehow we seem to be comfortable in that.
Or what could I have done? What could I have done? What could
Yes.
I have done? That's your words.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You know, when Yashoda was here, one of our discussions, she was, as some of this is really dawning in her, and she's looking at everything, and she's had a very, very, very uncomfortable life. Thank God we all have. And so, right?
Yeah.
And she has been trying this go-to with this modern psych approach to, let's work it out. And so she said, what's said in psychology is that the ego is the comfort zone, and that we're actually wanting to guide people back to their identity. And this is what we see in this age, is everybody's going back to their identity and trying to take solace in their identity, but that just brings us to war. Because there's every different identity here. There's every different color, there's every different shape, there's every different size, there's every different belief. And so trying to find comfort in your individual identity as opposed to the unity will only ever lead you to
Separation.
discomfort. So what we take to be the source of comfort and we try to find solace in is the place of discomfort. It's the place of suffering. So we come to this question. I mean, when we finally have had enough of this, and why this discussion this morning? Well, apparently it's to try to encourage you to have enough of it. To get to enough of a level of disgust with it.
Yes, not dispassion. Yes, disgust.
Where you'll recognize that I'm not living according to the truth. I'm not. I stopped even trying. Right? I'm spirit. I have to live my life as spirit. I have to stop living it as if I were this body.
It's very free. It's very free.
I have to love all and serve all. I hear these words, but I have to actually do it. The person where there's an arising of something else, I have to get rid of that. I have to be free of it. I have to be a net surplus in this world. I have to be in the light. I have to carry the light. And so you get to that, how to do, that's the question. Devote to the absolute. Devote to the absolute. Because you can't do it. You can't do anything you want to do ultimately. You can have the money, but what did you want it for?
To get happiness, but it's still fleeting.
But it already exists. Whatever you're seeking, it already exists.
Right.
It's not a question of getting it. It's not a question of creating it.
No.
It's a question of locating it and submitting to it.
Yeah.
Turning your life over to it. So, devotion.
Mm-hmm.
So this question, so because whatever you devote yourself to, you become.
Yeah.
So this question then comes to the top. At some point this question comes to the top. It comes to the top even for a jnani, and I can speak to that. This is why we focus so much on this word nididhyasana. That was an aha moment at some point. Live as if it's the truth. So there's this intellectual thing going on. This is true, this is not, etc., etc. But then live it, put it into practice, live it. How to live it. How to live it. How to devote to you.
You totally have the experience in life, striving to get this, that, or the other thing, and accomplishing.
That's the point. That's the point.
You have the skills.
We actually have the skills.
Yes.
Everyone here has skills. I mean, everyone, I don't just mean in this room, I mean everyone here
Yes.
has skills. And so it's a matter of reorienting them. And then based upon the psyche, based upon the skill set, and based upon the way that we relate, etc., how can I employ this? And so, okay, just a little bit of this commentary. So there were 3 points in here that Swami Chinmayananda has chosen to put light on. And they're very significant. And we will come back to the one about the body, embodied. So those who, fixing their mind on me, worship me, ever steadfast and endowed with supreme faith. And fixing their thought on me, we discussed yesterday morning. And as practicing yogis, we have tools for that. Mantra being one of them. And then as practicing jnana yogis who sit together and study Upanishad and hear, etc., and have intellects that are being purified, we have the tool of the intellect in order to dissect the objects that are around us and see that they're not what they appear to be. And you have the capacity to see God right here if you practice it. Right? As long as you persist in saying, it's a hand, it's a hand, it's a hand, then you're not there. But when you start to actually work with it and you say to yourself, 5 elements, and you look to see if there's a difference between these 5 elements and those 5 elements, or these 5 elements, and you say no. Where did the 5 elements come from? I mean, we do this.
Yes.
We do this. And so I've shared with you already from Swami Atmananda the story that he shares about going to the Met and looking at these, and the Impressionist, I keep forgetting, so we'll say Dali, or maybe it was Monet or something, and he kept looking at the works of art until he got it. And this is what he's describing. So you were looking at this tree earlier, so you can look at it until you get it. So we have that practice in terms of thinking of me, right?
Yeah.
And seeing me. And we have a library full of books written by me, capital M-E. And so at any time we can pick up one of those, we can take a few minutes, we can contemplate and think of me. So we have so many ways to do, but that's number 1 in terms of this devotion, as he's answering this question of devotion. Number 2, ever self-controlled, worship me. So we get to see, I see how the mind carries me off everywhere. I see how when I'm practicing meditation, seated meditation, I have to keep bringing the mind back, right? So that's it. Self-control. So that's practice of self-control. Other ways as well.
Could you call it disconnect from the senses?
Disconnect from the senses. Yes, yes.
Oh.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And we were discussing that yesterday in Upanishads.
Mm-hmm.
Worship me. And then the third point, with supreme faith. With supreme faith. And we were discussing some yesterday as well. Swamiji says beautifully, he says, faith is generally understood as blind faith, but blind belief is not Shraddha, he says. Shraddha is my belief in something I do not know so that I may come to know what I believe in. And that's a very interesting and beautiful approach to it. My belief in something I do not know so that I may come to know what I believe in. And when you know, that's also called faith, but that now is the deepest faith. That's the unshakable faith. It's really knowing. It's really knowing, which others would describe as faith. He has such faith. But from here, I would even say, it's not actually faith, I know it. I know it. I've come to know it. Mm-hmm. But Shraddha is then here described as living the life, having these questions, coming to a place of a higher belief, and now seeing if it's really true. Right? Because ultimately, just believing in something will not do. Whatever you believe in, the universe will give you the means to perfect or to set aside. Yes.
And we can use our experiences to investigate the experiences and the truth. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but that's what I have discovered, in some of these truths, I have to go back to my experience and I see the truth in this situation that I didn't see.
Yes, and you'll be given a test now to see if that sticks.
Yeah.
Sticks is a very good way to relate to it, to see if it sticks,
And it does.
to see if it passes the test.
Yeah.
And when it consistently passes the test, in science we call it a law.
Yeah.
And within you call it, now I know the truth of it.
Yeah.
So in that way we all walk our pilgrimage. And if we live our life, and if we do our best to live these beliefs, then they will either be hardened, become known, or they'll be set aside. Over time. Over time.
Set aside, jump away.
It wasn't true.
Yeah.
It wasn't true. You're not better than me. It wasn't true. I'm not better than you. It wasn't true.
Right.
Okay. So he says, thus, three main conditions are enumerated in the stanza as essential and unavoidable for one to become a true devotee. That is, 1, perfect faith. So he says perfect faith, which means faith that's been perfected through the crucible. Ever steadfast in worship. And one's mind totally merged with the concept of the Lord. And there, that will get explored now over the next few sutras or so. The mind merged with the concept of the Lord. You see, in the mind, we deal with thoughts. And thoughts are all concepts. So what's the objective again? We go to Raja Yoga.
Yoga's Chitta Vritti Nirodha.
Yoga's Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Beautiful, that's it. So yoga is the cessation of the mind stuff, of the vrittis. which,
worthless thought. Yeah.
but this is the way to do it, is to occupy the mind in the concept of the divine, because that opens the mind, as it will. That's the nutcracker.
And it relieves the body. The body just fades
And
out.
the bodies.
Just fades out.
I mean,
Just isn't part of it.
well,
Is the vehicle. But
the body's the temple.
yeah.
So it's not a meaningless entity.
Not meaningless in that sense.
It's the temple.
Yeah.
It's the temple.
Oh.
Okay, we'll close. Page 174 for those joining us online. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukmeva Bandhanan Mritor Mukshiyamamritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukmeva Bandhanan Mritor Mukshiyamamritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukmeva Bandhanan Mritor Mukshiyamamritat Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Shantu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashanto Makashi Dukhabhak Bhave Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotir Gamaya Mritor Ma Mritam Gamaya Om Purnamida Purnamidam Purna Purnamudashyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O adorable Lord of mercy and love, salutations and prostrations unto thee. Thou art omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, Satchidananda. Thou art existence, knowledge, and bliss absolute. Thou art the indweller of all beings. Grant us an understanding heart, equal vision, balanced mind, faith, devotion, and wisdom. Grant us inner spiritual strength to resist temptation and to control the mind. Free us from egoism, lust, anger, greed, hatred, and jealousy. Fill our hearts with divine virtues. Let us behold thee in all these names and forms. Let us serve thee in all these names and forms. Let us ever remember thee. Let us ever sing thy glories. Let thy name be ever on our lips. Let us abide in thee forever and ever. On Bolo Satguru Shivananda Maharaj Ki, and for all of the saints and sages of all the traditions.
Yeah.
Okay, let's rise forward.
The problems